The forest was quiet that night, the kind of silence that wrapped itself around everything like a thick blanket. The only sounds were the soft rustle of leaves and the distant hoot of an owl. Ethan, a 10-year-old boy with messy brown hair and wide, curious eyes, had snuck out of his house to look for fireflies. He loved how they glowed in the dark, tiny lights flickering like magic. His older brother Ryan always told him not to wander off alone, but Ethan couldn't resist. The woods felt alive at night, full of secrets waiting to be discovered. A few miles away, Lily, a 9-year-old girl with freckles scattered across her nose and a head full of curly blonde hair, sat on her backyard swing. She wasn't supposed to be outside this late either, but she had heard strange noises earlier, low hums that didn't sound like anything from Earth. Her mom, Claire, had brushed it off as wind or machinery from the nearby factory. But Lily knew better. She had seen too many science fiction movies with her dad to ignore something that felt so otherworldly. Neither Ethan nor Lily noticed the faint shimmer in the sky above them. It wasn't a star or a plane. It moved differently, almost silently, hovering for a moment before descending into the trees. If anyone had been watching, they might have thought it was just a trick of the light, but there was nothing natural about what happened next. Ethan froze when he saw the glowing object land between the trees. It looked like a giant metal bug, its surface smooth and reflective, with legs that bent unnaturally. A low whirring noise filled the air, making his heart race. Before he could run, a bright beam shot out from the craft, engulfing him in light. His feet left the ground as if invisible hands were pulling him upward. He tried to scream, but no sound came out. At the same time, Lily felt the hairs on her arms stand up. Something wasn't right. She turned toward the woods behind her house just as another beam appeared, this one aimed directly at her. She stumbled backward, dropping her flashlight. But it was too late. The force of the beam lifted her off the ground, spinning her around until everything went dark. When Ethan woke up, he was lying on a cold, hard surface. The room around him was dimly lit, and the walls seemed to pulse faintly, as though they were alive. He blinked, trying to make sense of where he was. Then he heard a small voice nearby. "Are you okay?" it asked. Turning his head, he saw Lily sitting a few feet away, her knees pulled up to her chest. "I think so," Ethan replied, though his voice shook. "Where are we?" Before Lily could answer, the wall in front of them slid open with a hiss. Two towering figures stepped inside. They weren't human. They had shiny black exoskeletons, sharp mandibles, and multiple glowing eyes. One of them carried a device that emitted a series of clicks and whirs. Ethan instinctively backed away, clutching Lily's arm. "Don't hurt us," Lily shouted, surprising even herself with her bravery. The creatures tilted their heads, studying them like scientists observing lab rats. Then one of them spoke, not in words, but in a series of chirps and tones that somehow translated into English inside their minds. "You're safe. Do not fear." But Ethan and Lily weren't convinced. Safe didn't feel like being taken from your home in the middle of the night by giant insect-like aliens. Safe didn't feel like being trapped in a strange, pulsating room millions of miles from Earth. Whatever these creatures wanted, it couldn't be good. Back on Earth, Ryan paced anxiously in front of Ethan's empty bed. He had checked everywhere, the yard, the street, the woods, but there was no sign of his little brother. Claire arrived soon after, equally frantic about Lily's disappearance. Neither of them knew it yet, but their lives were about to change forever. Ethan and Lily sat side by side on the cold, hard floor of the alien room. The two towering insect-like creatures stood nearby, watching them with glowing eyes that seemed to pierce right through their thoughts. Ethan hugged his knees tightly, trying not to let his fear show, while Lily bit her lip, her mind racing for a way out. Neither of them said a word, but they shared the same thought. What did these aliens want? The taller of the two creatures stepped forward, holding a strange device that hummed softly. It extended a thin, claw-like appendage toward Ethan, who flinched and scooted closer to Lily. The alien paused, tilting its head as if confused by his reaction. Then it made another series of chirps and clicks, which translated into broken English in their minds. We study. You learn. Study us? Like lab rats. Lily snapped, surprising even herself with how bold she sounded. Her voice echoed slightly in the small, dimly lit room. The alien didn't respond directly. Instead, it activated the device in its hand, and a bright light shot out, scanning Ethan from head to toe. He squirmed under the beam, feeling like he was being weighed and measured all at once. When the light moved to Lily, she clenched her fists and glared at the creature, refusing to look away. She wasn't going to let them think she was scared, even if she was. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Ryan and Claire had joined forces after realizing their loved ones were missing under eerily similar circumstances. They met at a small diner late at night, both exhausted but determined. Ryan pushed a crumpled map across the table toward Claire. "Look," he said, pointing to 2 red marks. "This is where Ethan disappeared, and this is your backyard. They're only a few miles apart." Claire nodded, her fingers tracing the distance between the 2 points. "It's too much of a coincidence," she muttered. "And there's something else." She pulled out a blurry photo taken by a neighbor's security camera. It showed a faint, hovering object above her house the night Lily vanished. "Whatever took them isn't human." Ryan leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. He wanted to believe it was some prank or misunderstanding, but deep down, he knew better. "We need help," he admitted. "Someone who knows about, UFOs or aliens or whatever." That's when Claire remembered Dr. Alan Carter, a retired astrophysicist who lived on the outskirts of town. Though he rarely interacted with anyone, rumors claimed he had spent decades studying extraterrestrial phenomena. Desperate for answers, Ryan and Claire decided to pay him a visit. At first, Dr. Carter was reluctant to get involved. He was an older man with wild gray hair and glasses perched precariously on his nose. His home was cluttered with books, papers, and old equipment that looked like it belonged in a museum. But when Ryan showed him the photo and explained the situation, something changed in the scientist's expression. "This isn't the first time," Dr. Carter said quietly, pulling out a dusty folder filled with newspaper clippings and handwritten notes. "There have been reports for years. People disappearing without a trace, strange lights in the sky. Most dismissed it as nonsense, but I always suspected." He trailed off, staring at the photo again. Finally, he sighed and adjusted his glasses. "If you're serious about finding them, I'll help. But you need to understand, it won't be easy. These things don't play by our rules." Back on the alien planet, Ethan and Lily were growing restless. After hours of tests and scans, they realized the aliens weren't just curious. They were gathering information. Every question, every scan, felt like pieces of a puzzle the creatures were putting together. But why? Ethan noticed something during one of the tests. While the aliens focused on Lily, he spotted a control panel near the door. It was covered in symbols he didn't understand, but one button stood out, a large red circle that seemed different from the rest. When the aliens turned their backs, Ethan crept over and pressed it. Nothing happened immediately, but then the lights flickered and a loud alarm blared through the room. The aliens screeched in surprise, scrambling to fix whatever had gone wrong. In the chaos, Ethan grabbed Lily's hand. "Now's our chance," he whispered. They ran out of the room, heart pounding, unsure of where they were going but knowing one thing for certain. They weren't going to stay trapped forever. Ethan and Lily sprinted down a narrow, dimly lit corridor, their footsteps echoing against the smooth, pulsating walls. The alarm blared loudly behind them, filling the air with an urgent, high-pitched wail. Neither of them knew where they were going, but they didn't care. They just wanted to put as much distance as possible between themselves and the aliens. "This way," Ethan whispered, tugging Lily's hand as he turned a corner. They stopped abruptly when they saw another group of creatures, smaller than the ones that had captured them, standing guard near a doorway. The guards looked startled by the alarm, but quickly raised their weapons, pointing them at the children. Lily's heart raced. She squeezed Ethan's hand tightly, ready to run again. But then something unexpected happened. One of the guards lowered its weapon slightly and tilted its head, studying them curiously. It chirped softly, almost like it was trying to communicate. "Do you think maybe it's on our side?" Lily asked hesitantly. "I don't know," Ethan replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "But we don't have much choice." Taking a deep breath, Lily stepped forward, raising her hand slowly to show she wasn't a threat. "We're not here to hurt anyone," she said, hoping the creature could understand her words. To her surprise, the guard responded with another series of chirps, this time softer and less aggressive. Then it gestured toward the doorway it had been guarding. Ethan glanced at Lily, unsure if they should trust the alien. But before they could decide, more alarms sounded in the distance, louder and more frantic. The guard pushed them gently through the doorway, urging them inside. The room beyond was unlike anything they'd seen so far. It was large and filled with rows of pods, each containing the human child. Some were asleep, while others stared blankly ahead, their faces pale and lifeless. Ethan gasped, recognizing one of the kids, a boy from his school named Jake. "They're keeping people here," Lily murmured, her voice trembling. "Why?" Before Ethan could answer, the door slid shut behind them, sealing them inside. For a moment, they felt trapped again, but then something shifted. A few of the kids in the pods began to stir, their eyes fluttering open as if waking from a deep sleep. One by one, they sat up, confused but alive. "What's happening?" Jake asked groggily, rubbing his temples. "We're getting out of here," Ethan said firmly. He explained what little he knew about the aliens and their experiments, urging the other kids to stay calm and follow him. Slowly, the group gathered together, united by a shared determination to escape. Back on Earth, Ryan, Claire, and Dr. Carter worked tirelessly to piece together a plan. Using outdated maps of the stars and fragments of information from Dr. Carter's research, they pinpointed the likely location of the alien planet. It was risky, possibly even impossible, but they had no other options. "We'll need a ship," Ryan said, pacing back and forth in Dr. Carter's cluttered workshop. "And weapons, something to defend ourselves." Dr. Carter nodded, pulling out blueprints for an old spacecraft he'd salvaged years ago. "It's not much, but it'll get us there," he said. "As for weapons, well, we'll have to improvise." Claire rolled up her sleeves, ready to help. "Tell me what to do," she said. "I'm not sitting this one out." Together, the trio transformed the dusty old ship into a functional vessel, equipping it with makeshift gadgets and tools scavenged from junkyards. It wasn't fancy, but it was theirs, a symbol of hope in a seemingly hopeless situation. As they prepared for launch, Ryan couldn't shake the image of Ethan's face from his mind. He promised himself he wouldn't return without his brother or any of the other kids. "We're coming for you," he muttered under his breath, gripping the controls tightly. On the alien planet, Ethan and Lily led the group of rescued children through the labyrinthine corridors, guided by the sympathetic guard who had helped them earlier. They moved cautiously, avoiding patrols and hiding whenever necessary. Along the way, they learned the guard's name, Zix, and discovered that not all of the aliens supported their leader's actions. "You're risking everything to help us," Lily said to Zix as they paused to catch their breath. "Why?" Zix clicked softly, his glowing eyes softening. "Wrong is wrong," he replied in broken English. "Not all Krillin agree." Ethan smiled faintly, feeling a spark of hope for the first time since their capture. Maybe they weren't alone in this fight after all. Ethan and Lily led the group of children deeper into the alien facility, their footsteps soft but hurried. Zix stayed close, guiding them through hidden passages and warning them whenever Krillin patrols were nearby. The air was tense, heavy with the weight of what they were trying to do. Every corner they turned felt like it could be their last. "Stay close," Ethan whispered, glancing over his shoulder at the others. Some of the kids still looked dazed, struggling to keep up, but most had begun to regain their strength. They trusted Ethan and Lily to lead them out of this nightmare, and that trust gave the two children a sense of responsibility they'd never felt before. Lily noticed something strange as they moved, a faint humming sound coming from one of the walls. She stopped and pressed her ear against it, her brow furrowing. "There's something behind here," she said softly. "It sounds alive." Zix clicked nervously, shaking his head. "Dangerous," he warned. But Lily wasn't convinced. She tapped on the wall gently, listening carefully to the changes in the hum. Then she spotted a small seam running along the edge of the panel. Without hesitation, she pushed against it, and the wall slid open with a quiet hiss. Inside was a massive chamber filled with glowing orbs suspended in midair. Each orb pulsed rhythmically, like a heartbeat, and thin wires connected them to a central console in the middle of the room. The sight was mesmerizing, but there was something unsettling about it too. "This must be how they're controlling everything," Ethan said, stepping closer to examine the console. He didn't know much about technology, but he recognized buttons and switches when he saw them. "If we can shut this down—" "No," Zix interrupted urgently, his mandibles clicking rapidly. "Too risky. Whole system collapse." "But if it stops the aliens from keeping us locked up, isn't it worth it?" Lily asked, looking at Zix with determination. "We can't just run forever." Zix hesitated, torn between loyalty to his own kind and his growing bond with the humans. Finally, he nodded reluctantly. "Okay, but quick." Ethan and Lily worked together, pressing random buttons and pulling levers until the orbs began to dim. The hum grew louder, almost deafening, and the entire room shook violently. Alarms blared again, louder than before, signaling that their actions hadn't gone unnoticed. "We need to go, now," Ethan shouted, grabbing Lily's hand. The group bolted out of the chamber, retracing their steps as fast as they could. Behind them, the facility started to malfunction. Lights flickered, doors jammed, and parts of the ceiling crumbled, blocking pathways. Meanwhile, far above the planet, Ryan, Claire, and Dr. Carter approached Vexor 7 in their patched-together spacecraft. The journey had been rough, with constant mechanical issues and near misses with asteroid fields. But they had made it. As they entered the atmosphere, they gazed out the window at the alien world below. A jagged landscape of dark metal structures and glowing veins of energy. "There," Claire exclaimed, pointing to a massive structure in the distance. It was shaped like a giant insect, its spindly legs stretching across the horizon. Smoke rose from several sections, evidence of internal chaos. "That has to be where they are," Ryan said, gripping the controls tightly. "Let's land as close as we can." Dr. Carter adjusted the ship's thrusters, guiding it toward a flat area near the facility. The landing was bumpy, jolting everyone inside, but they didn't have time to worry about bruises or scrapes. Grabbing whatever makeshift weapons they had brought, they stepped onto the alien soil, ready for whatever came next. Back inside the facility, Ethan and Lily reached a large doorway leading outside. It was sealed shut, but Zix used his claws to pry it open just enough for them to squeeze through. Fresh air hit their faces for the first time in what felt like days, and they took a moment to breathe deeply. But their relief was short-lived. A swarm of Krillin soldiers appeared, surrounding them with menacing clicks and raised weapons. At the front stood the High Commander, its exoskeleton gleaming ominously under the pale light. Its eyes locked onto Ethan and Lily, burning with fury. "You will pay for your interference," the commander growled, its voice cold and sharp in their minds. Ryan, Claire, and Dr. Carter arrived just in time to see the standoff. Without hesitation, Ryan charged forward, shouting, "Leave them alone." The commander turned its gaze to the newcomers, clearly unimpressed. "More humans," it sneered. "You are weak. You cannot win." For a moment, everything seemed hopeless. But then Zix stepped forward, standing between the humans and the Krillin. His voice rang out loud and clear, even though it trembled slightly. Enough. This ends now. And for the first time, the Krillin soldiers hesitated. The standoff was tense, the air thick with uncertainty. Zix stood tall between the humans and the Krillin soldiers, his glowing eyes fixed on the High Commander. His voice, though trembling, carried a quiet strength that made everyone pause. Enough, he repeated, his mandibles clicking softly. This ends now. The commander tilted its head, its multiple eyes narrowing as it studied Zix. You betray your own kind, it asked, its tone sharp and accusing. I follow what is right, Zix replied firmly. What you are doing, it is wrong. Humans are not tools or experiments. They deserve freedom. For a moment, no one moved. The Krillin soldiers glanced at each other, their usual discipline wavering. Some of them lowered their weapons slightly, unsure of what to do next. It was clear that Zix's words had struck a nerve, not just with the commander, but with many of the guards who had silently questioned their leader's orders. Ryan seized the opportunity. Listen to him, he shouted, stepping forward. We're not here to fight all of you. We just want our people back. Ethan and Lily exchanged a glance, surprised by Ryan's boldness. Claire stayed close behind him, holding a makeshift weapon tightly in her hands, ready to defend her daughter if needed. Dr. Carter, though older and less physically imposing, held his ground, his expression calm but resolute. The commander let out a low growl, clearly frustrated. You think defiance will save you. You are outnumbered. Maybe, Ryan admitted, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. But we're not giving up. Not without a fight. Before the commander could respond, Ethan spoke up, his young voice cutting through the tension. You took us from our homes. You hurt us, tested us like we were nothing. But we're not nothing. We're stronger than you think. Lily nodded, stepping forward to stand beside Ethan. And we're not alone anymore. Look around, you can see it too. Even your own people don't believe in this anymore. The commander's gaze shifted to the group of children standing behind Ethan and Lily. Their faces were pale and tired, but their eyes burned with determination. Then it looked at its own soldiers, many of whom avoided its piercing stare. For the first time, doubt flickered across its face. Suddenly, a loud explosion rocked the area. A section of the facility collapsed nearby, sending debris flying into the sky. The alarms that had been blaring for hours grew even louder, signaling the facility's imminent failure. Sparks rained down from above as power lines snapped and machinery short-circuited. We need to move now, Dr. Carter yelled over the chaos. He pointed toward an open clearing where their ship waited. Get to the ship while they're distracted. Zix turned to the humans, his glowing eyes filled with urgency. Go. I will hold them off. No. Lily protested, tears welling up in her eyes. You've done so much for us already. You don't have to. I choose this, Zix interrupted gently. For what is right. Go. Live. Without waiting for another argument, Zix turned to face the Krillin soldiers, raising his claws in a defensive stance. His actions inspired several of the guards to join him, forming a barrier between the humans and the commander. The rest of the soldiers hesitated, unwilling to attack their own comrades. Ryan grabbed Ethan and Lily's hands, pulling them toward the ship. Come on, we can't waste this chance, he urged. The group ran as fast as they could, dodging falling debris and bursts of energy from malfunctioning equipment. Claire helped the weaker children along, urging them to keep moving despite their exhaustion. Behind them, Zix and the defectors clashed with the remaining loyalists, buying precious time for the escape. When they finally reached the ship, Dr. Carter was already inside, frantically working the controls. Hurry, he called out, his hands shaking as he flipped switches and adjusted levers. One by one, the humans climbed aboard, collapsing onto the floor in relief. Ryan was the last to enter, taking one final look at Zix, who fought valiantly against overwhelming odds. The alien locked eyes with him for a brief moment, nodding slightly before turning back to the battle. As the ship lifted off, Ethan pressed his face against the window, watching the facility shrink below them. Flames engulfed parts of it, and smoke billowed into the sky. Though they had escaped, his heart ached for Zix, who had sacrificed everything to give them a chance. "He saved us," Lily whispered, her voice breaking. "He gave us our lives back." Ryan put an arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. "And we'll never forget him," he said firmly. "None of us will." The ship soared higher, leaving Vector 7 behind. As they broke through the planet's atmosphere, the humans aboard shared a moment of silence. For Zix, for the ones they'd lost, and for the long journey ahead. But amidst the sorrow, there was also hope. They had faced impossible odds and won. And they knew, deep down, that this was only the beginning. The ship rattled and groaned as it broke free from Vector 7's atmosphere, the engines straining under the weight of its passengers. Everyone was silent, their faces pale and streaked with dirt and tears. The adrenaline that had fueled their escape was fading, leaving behind exhaustion and a deep sense of loss. Ethan stared out the window at the shrinking planet below, his mind replaying Zix's final moments over and over again. "He didn't have to do that," Lily murmured, her voice barely audible above the hum of the engines. She clutched her knees tightly, trying to hold herself together. "He gave everything for us." Ryan knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "He chose to," he said softly. "And because of him, we're alive. We owe it to him to keep going, to make sure this wasn't for nothing." Dr. Carter adjusted the controls, his hands still trembling but steady enough to guide the ship toward Earth. "We're not in the clear yet," he warned. "This old bucket isn't built for long trips. If we don't find a way to stabilize the systems, we might not make it home." Claire stood up, brushing dust off her jeans. Her eyes were red from crying, but her voice was firm. "Then we work together. All of us. We've come this far. We can't give up now." Everyone nodded, snapping out of their grief just enough to focus on survival. Ethan and Lily helped Dr. Carter monitor the ship's systems, pointing out warning lights or strange noises they noticed. Ryan and Claire worked on patching leaks and tightening loose wires, using whatever tools they'd brought along. Even the rescued children pitched in, handing supplies or holding flashlights when needed. As they worked, the mood shifted slightly. Though sadness still hung heavy in the air, there was a new determination among them, a shared understanding that they had to fight for each other, just like Zix had done. Hours passed, and the ship began to stabilize. The engine settled into a steady rhythm, and the rattling subsided. For the first time since leaving Vector 7, they allowed themselves to breathe a little easier. But then, something unexpected happened. A faint signal appeared on the ship's radar, a blinking dot moving steadily toward them. At first, they thought it might be debris or an asteroid, but as it grew closer, they realized it wasn't natural. It was another spacecraft. "Is it one of theirs?" Ethan asked nervously, gripping the edge of his seat. Dr. Carter squinted at the screen, adjusting the settings to get a clearer image. "I don't think so," he said slowly. "It's too small to be a Krillin warship. And look, it's broadcasting a message." The message crackled through the speakers, static-filled but understandable. "Human vessel. Respond. Assistance. It's human." Claire exclaimed, relief washing over her face. "They must have been sent to look for us." Ryan quickly activated the comms system, his voice shaking as he replied. "This is Ryan speaking. We're survivors, humans rescued from Vector 7. Please, we need help." There was a pause, followed by a calm, professional voice. "Copy that, Ryan. This is Captain Hayes of the rescue team Echo 9. Hold your position. We'll rendezvous with you shortly." Tears streamed down Claire's face as she sank into a chair, overwhelmed with gratitude. "We're going to make it," she whispered. "We're really going to make it." Ethan and Lily hugged each other tightly, laughing through their tears. The other children cheered weakly, their spirits lifting for the first time in days. Even Dr. Carter managed a small smile, leaning back in his seat with a sigh of relief. When the rescue ship finally docked with theirs, a team of astronauts boarded, bringing medical supplies and warm blankets. They checked everyone for injuries and offered food and water, which the group devoured eagerly. Captain Hayes, a kind-faced woman with graying hair, introduced herself and promised to take them safely back to Earth. As they prepared to transfer to the larger ship, Ethan looked back at their battered craft one last time. Despite its flaws, it had carried them to safety. "Thank you," he whispered quietly, touching the wall. He knew Zix wouldn't have made it this far without their determination. And neither would they. On the rescue ship, the journey home felt surreal. They were safe now, surrounded by people who cared about their well-being. But even as they rested, they couldn't forget what they had been through, or the sacrifices that had been made for them. "We'll tell everyone," Lily said firmly, breaking the silence. "About Zix, about the others who helped us, about what the Krillin did." Ryan nodded, his expression resolute. "And we'll make sure no one ever forgets." For the first time in a long while, hope burned brightly within them. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they knew they could face them together. The rescue ship landed smoothly on Earth, its engines humming softly as it touched down on a secure military base. The survivors stepped out into the bright sunlight, squinting against the glare after so many days in dimly lit alien corridors and cramped spacecrafts. For Ethan and Lily, it felt strange to feel solid ground beneath their feet again. The air smelled different, cleaner, fresher, and the sky above was a brilliant blue instead of the dark, smoky haze of Vector 7. A crowd of people waited for them: soldiers, scientists, doctors, and most importantly, family members. Claire spotted her husband first, running toward him with tears streaming down her face. He hugged her tightly, then knelt to embrace Lily, holding her as if he'd never let go. Ryan saw his parents next, their faces pale with worry, but lighting up when they saw him leading Ethan forward. They pulled both boys into a tight hug, whispering words of love and relief. For a moment, everything seemed perfect. But deep down, Ethan and Lily knew things would never truly be the same. They had seen too much, endured too much, and while they were grateful to be home, part of them still carried the weight of what had happened on that distant planet. Over the following weeks, the group shared their story with anyone who would listen. Scientists questioned them endlessly, eager to learn about the Krillin and their technology. News reporters swarmed them, turning their harrowing escape into headlines across the globe. But Ethan and Lily refused to let Zix's sacrifice fade into obscurity. Every interview, every speech, they made sure to mention him, the brave alien who had risked everything to help them. "He showed us that not all differences mean enemies," Lily said during one press conference, her voice steady despite the cameras flashing around her. "He taught us to trust, even when it feels impossible." Ethan nodded, adding, "And he reminded us that courage isn't about being fearless. It's about doing what's right, no matter how scared you are." Their words resonated deeply, sparking conversations worldwide. People began to think differently, not just about aliens, but about each other. The idea that kindness and bravery could exist anywhere, even among those who seemed so different, gave humanity a newfound sense of hope. Meanwhile, back on Vector 7, change was happening too. Zix's actions had ignited a spark within the Krillin ranks. Many soldiers and workers who had silently doubted their leader's methods now openly questioned them. Some defectors fled the planet entirely, seeking refuge elsewhere. Others stayed behind, determined to rebuild their society based on fairness and understanding rather than domination. On Earth, life slowly returned to normal, or at least as normal as it could be after such an extraordinary event. Ethan went back to school, though he found himself looking at his classmates differently. They seemed younger somehow, unaware of the vast universe beyond their small town. Lily spent hours sketching pictures of Zix and the other Krillin she'd met, trying to capture their unique features and the emotions they had shown her. Ryan and Claire kept in touch, bonding over their shared experience. Together, they started a foundation dedicated to helping families affected by mysterious disappearances, determined to prevent others from going through what they had endured. Dr. Carter became an advisor for the government's new space exploration program, advocating for peaceful contact with extraterrestrial life. One night, Ethan lay on the grass in his backyard, staring up at the stars. He thought about Zix and wondered if the alien was still alive somewhere, fighting for a better future for his people. He didn't know for sure, but he liked to imagine it was true. "Do you think we'll ever see them again?" Lily asked, joining him with a blanket draped over her shoulders. "Maybe," Ethan replied, smiling faintly. "But even if we don't, I think we changed something. For them. And for us." Lily nodded, leaning her head on his shoulder. Above them, the stars twinkled brightly, endless and full of possibilities. Whatever lay ahead, they knew humanity was ready to face it, together.